The following podcast you're about to listen to is brought to you by the Push Start Media Network, where everything you do in life begins with pushing start. Thank you for listening to another episode, Sports Your Enthusiasm Sports Podcast. I am your humble host, Bryce Benjamin, along with my co-host, Mr. Ed Rueter, returning guest, Joe Coscia in the building. Fellas, what's good, man? How are y'all feeling?
I'm feeling outstanding. We've got a great topic today. It's one of my absolute favorites that we've done so far, so I'm excited to talk about it. What do you think, Joe?
I'm in the worst goddamn mood ever just because we're taping this right after that Buffalo Bills performance against the Titans. So I'll eventually get over it. But I'm very excited to talk about some of these duos here, but I'm going to be definitely more in a jaded mood than usual.
Yeah, man, the Bills could have used some of these duels from that game, man. That was tough. So y'all know the topic. If you're listening to this podcast, you're seeing the title, just heard what Rueter and Joe talked about. Top 5 duels in sports history, our sports history. All right, that's kind of the kicker here. This is based on us. This is based on us growing up, watching sports, becoming sports fans, and who kind of stood out during our fanhood, like who we grew up watching, who connects with us, and just kind of take you guys down memory lane, man, and see if anybody agrees with us or not. So this is going to be a dope episode. Definitely looking forward to hearing your guys's and sharing minds as well. Real quick, just like to get 30 seconds on this. Jets decided to go ahead and cut Le'Veon Bell. They couldn't find a trade partner, and paid the man $28 million to play fucking 15 snaps. What's your thoughts, man?
Yeah, the news for me on that is just simply that they were not able to find a trade partner, which is unbelievable how that still happens in today's NFL, that you can't find anything at all of value for this guy. I think that taking that year off killed his career, and then obviously going to the Jets, he got paid, but that was a career-ending move, deciding to sign with the Jets and take that year off. So I suppose he was one of the last big name players on that roster, and it's ugly for New York Jets fan. The only thing I can think at this point is that we're in full tanking for Trevor mode out there in New Jersey,
which is crazy because if I were Trevor, he's a junior this year, isn't he?
Yeah,
I'd stay in school if the Jets had the first pick.
For real.
That's absolutely what he was discussing. He's been asked that several times, and he's kind of done the non-committal answer so far.
Yeah.
We're going to see how it goes. But
I mean, because in all honesty, I don't really think Sam Darnold is a terrible quarterback. You know, you put Sam Darnold on the Bills, and he's probably just as successful. I mean, he's not going to have the same intangibles, the same arm strength and stuff like that Josh has, but he's an NFL quarterback. It's not on Darnold at this point. But I think to what you were saying, Ed, with Le'Veon, it reminded me of the Fournette situation with Jacksonville. You know, they couldn't find a trade partner for him, and you're thinking, why the hell can they not find anybody? It's just position. You know, running backs, they're starting to, I don't want to say it become a dime a dozen, but they're just not. Teams aren't starting to spend top dollar on them, and they're not going to give up any draft capital to acquire his salary at his position, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy. Shout out to Le'Veon, man. Ski Mask Hall of Fame just completely robbed the Jets. Completely. Man. All right, boys, let's go ahead and get into this episode. Joe, you want to go ahead and kick us off, man? Number 5 for you, sir.
All right, yeah, number 5 for me. All right, so we have to make sure that we make it very clear to the listeners here that this is not based on statistics or anything like this. Is our own personal top 5 duos, because I just want to make sure because, you know, I'd be throwing some Bill Russell and Bob Cousy at you probably from long ago. So for me, for my number 5, and they should probably even be higher, maybe on some lists, and I'm only putting them on my list because I'm a true sports fan, and I feel like true sports fans have to recognize greatness when they see greatness. And probably 2 guys that I'm not a fan of as a diehard Buffalo Bills fan. But number 5 on my list is Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski.
Ooh. Yeah.
So I'm going Brady and Gronk is my 5. I don't really think there's much explanation needed. It is the two of them when they played together, but seeing them often 2 times a year against Buffalo, and then all the primetime games they were given, as part of the Patriots, to watch them and just absolutely dominate. You're talking Tom Brady, probably the best quarterback to play, one of the top 3 at least. And then Rob Gronkowski, in his prime, the top tight end, the best tight end ever play, between maybe him and Gates.
Tony G.
Tony G. Yeah, how did I forget about Tony G? And just the connection that they had in the way that they would dominate games. And it frustrated me to no end. I hated them for a long, long time. And then I think once they go away and you kind of think back to what they did and what they were able to do in their careers, and you have to respect it. Gronk, I feel like, scored a touchdown every time he played the Bills. And I mean, Brady, what was he like? Something like 30-1 against the Bills in his career. It was something crazy. So I mean, they were the Bills' daddies, as Pedro would say. I think I've said that 2 times in a row now. I've been on this podcast, but it's my number 5. I put them on there just so you guys could realize, a true sports fan will admit when greatness, even though it kills you and your hometown team, I suppose.
Yeah. Tom Brady and Gronkowski, that combination was fucking unstoppable when Gronk was fully healthy. And I'm glad it's not in New England anymore. And I was tired of dealing with the AFC because we had to go against some boys too in Baltimore. But that's a good one, man. I like that one a lot.
Thank you.
All right, Rueter.
And welcome to another edition of Who's Your Daddy with Joe Coscia.
I'm branching out after this. I'm forming my own. It's going to be the name of my podcast.
That's outstanding. He's growing right before our eyes.
Who's your daddy?
The Who's Your Daddy podcast. Oh, man, I want trademark rights on that. I want royalties for sure. But I love exactly where you went with that, Joe. And part of the reason that I say that is because I did the exact same thing that you did. This is the only, well, not the same pairing, but this is the only duo on my list that I wasn't a personal huge fan of, but I just had to recognize their greatness together. So it's another thrower of the football and it's another catcher of the football. Not in the tight end form, but wide receiver. I've got Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison. Those are 2 guys that just absolutely dominated together. Peyton Manning, obviously, there's all the accolades that you could give to a quarterback he's been given. He had all the intangibles. He was like a coach on the field. Absolutely incredible. For someone who didn't have all the arm talent in the world, he managed to make it work, and Marvin Harrison was his main target throughout his career. I know this isn't about stats and things like that, but they're so absurd. I kind of had to bring them up here. 953 catches, 12,766 yards, and 112 touchdowns.
That was in one season, right?
That was in 1 year. That was one magical year. That was in the 10 seasons that they spent together. To put that in perspective, because, it's easy to just throw around numbers. There's only 6 players in the history of the NFL to have over 112 touchdown catches in their career. So to have that in one duo is incredible. The next closest is only in the 90s. I believe that was Jerry Rice and Steve Young. And in today's free agent era, I don't think we're ever going to see anything like that again. So those 2 just defined that, late 90s and early 2000s football for me. Peyton Manning was just on every cover of everything, and Marvin Harrison was his guy. So that's the number 5 duo for me.
Marvin, go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love Marvin Harrison for the fact that he was so just kind of calm, cool, and collected. He just had that demeanor where in a sport where the wide receiver seemed to be kind of like this diva personality now. he went out there, he put his hard hat on, he did his work, never really, showboated or anything like that. I've always liked Marvin Harrison and respected him for the way that he played the game.
Yeah, Joe, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say Marvin was one of those dudes that just went and got the job done. And you think about it, man, like you think about that era of football, he was playing with some fucking phenomenal wide receivers. This is when T.O. and Randy Moss was in their primes. And you go look at the numbers, Marvin Harrison is right there, if not better numbers than both of those guys in a lot of different seasons. Now, he had probably, the second or third greatest quarterback of all time throw him into the football, so that had a definitely cause for that. But, that's a great pick, though, Rueter. That combination, they used to kill us. Like I used to hate Peyton Manning because of that shit.
And I'm not even saying that, Harrison was the best of that era. And I'm not even saying Peyton was the best QB in that era. But together, I mean, you think about like the guys that you just mentioned, T.O., Randy Moss, all over the place.
Chad Johnson, Steve
different
Smith.
Teams, played on different teams, different quarterback combinations. So these two together were just absolutely nasty. And don't ever discredit for a second that Carlton Banks mustache that he rocked for most of his career too. you can't forget that.
He always looked 50, even when he was like 25.
He really did. He definitely looked like he should have been starring in the Jeffersons.
Yeah. Moving it on up.
All right, boys. I kind of went completely left field with my number 5 here. Okay. And yes, we're talking duos, and duos meaning two, right? Mm-hmm. And these two that I'm about to talk about right now isn't necessarily a partnership. They never played really on the same team or nothing of that nature. But once I explain this pick, you'll kind of see where I'm coming from. Number 5, I have The Rock and Stone Cold for wrestling.
Sports entertainment. I love it.
Yes, sir. And think about this. Like, I was a big wrestling fan in the early 90s, or I should say mid to late 90s. And, watching all the different feuds going on. And The Rock and Stone Cold still stands today for me as the greatest rivalry of all time in wrestling. And back as a little kid, I'm thinking it's real. They're really fighting and everything of that nature. But then as a grown-ass adult now, I realized that these guys were telling a story. And it was a performance that they was always putting on every time they came together. And even to this day, man, I can't think of a better rivalry, a better story, better performances than these two have put on consistent basis. I mean, they headlined 3 WrestleManias. Like, they headlined WrestleMania 15, 17, and 19. I remember all of those matches, and those like stuck with me and resonated with me. And man, when they got together, it was fucking magic. Like, I can guarantee you right now, the Stone Cold Stunner, and we all can picture it in our heads right now, The Rock taking that stunner and selling the fuck out of it. You know what I'm saying? So Stone Cold and The Rock came in at number 5 for me, man. That's one of the greatest sports duels, sports entertainment, albeit, but definitely one of the greatest sports duels I ever seen in my lifetime.
And that's the bottom line, because Bryce Benjamin said so.
All right.
I'll give you credit there. I'm not a follower, I should say, or I've never really gotten into wrestling, but I definitely have heard those two names. So I can see where you're going with that. I mean, the last time I followed wrestling, I'm probably talking George the Animal Steel and Roddy Piper probably are the last two that I know. So
that's good stuff. All right, number 4, guys. Joe, back to you.
All right. When you started and you introduced your number 5, I was nervous because I had my number 4 is exactly kind of like not exactly like your number 5, but these two were never teammates, but were kind of seen as this duo and this kind of separate entity from their own 2 specific teams. I'm going with, for my number 4, Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa.
I like that
as one of my duos. They're my number 4. That home run chase, I feel like it was almost like a WWE thing where it was almost scripted from preseason. McGwire with coming off of some injuries in St. Louis, and Sosa just crushing the ball in Chicago. They kind of built it up in spring training. I think I just called spring training preseason too horribly. They built it up to where we were prepped for this chase. And I just remember back when ESPN, like SportsCenter, was watchable for highlights, it seemed like every day one of them was hitting a bomb. and then McGuire would go up by one, or Sosa would go up by a couple home runs, and there's this